They had it all before they even understood what everything meant. Fame, fortune, adoration, delivered not after years of struggle, but in the fleeting wonder of childhood. They weren't just in the movies. They were the movies. And for a brief, golden moment in the 1970s, these children held the world in the palms of their tiny hands, until the cameras stopped rolling. And that's when the real story began. Tonight, we follow the lives of three unforgettable child stars, Ricky Schroder, Tatum O'Neal, and Jodie Foster, icons of a decade that celebrated youth, talent, and precocious charm. But what happened after the spotlight dimmed? What happens when the industry that embraced you at 9 grows silent at 19? This story is about more than just nostalgia. It's about identity, resilience, and the haunting echo of applause that never quite fades. You may remember their faces, but by the end of tonight, you'll understand the people behind them. What they carried, what they lost, and who they became. So, before we begin, I invite you to take a moment. Leave a like if stories like these stir something in you. Subscribe to hear more voices from the past. And tell me in the comments, where in the world are you listening from, and what time is it there? It's always fascinating to know whose night I'm sharing, and from how far away. Perhaps you're unwinding after a long day. Or maybe sleep won't come easily tonight, and this story is your quiet companion. Either way, you're in the right place. Now settle in, take a deep breath, and let's step back into the golden light of the 1970s. When some children weren't just growing up, they were growing famous. The story begins. His eyes were like floodlights, wide, glassy, and impossibly expressive. They carried both innocence and a strange emotional weight, as if they had already seen more than a child should. Before he ever spoke a line of dialogue on screen, Ricky Schroder's gaze had already told a story. Born in Brooklyn, New York, in 1970, Ricky was the second child of Diane and Richard Schroder Sr. His mother was a homemaker, his father an AT&T employee. Humble beginnings by any standard. But from an early age, it was clear that Ricky had something rare, a presence, a natural charisma that couldn't be taught. His journey to stardom didn't begin on a stage or a set, it began in the glossy pages of department store catalogs. At just 3 months old, Ricky became a baby model. By the time most kids were learning to walk, Ricky had already appeared in dozens of print ads and television commercials. He became the face of everything from toys to soap, small glimpses into a charm that would soon captivate a global audience. But modeling was only the beginning. What truly set him apart wasn't just his appearance, but how he carried himself in front of the camera. There was a subtle maturity, an ability to emote that felt beyond his years. This unusual talent caught the attention of Hollywood casting directors, and in the late 1970s, a seismic opportunity arrived. The role was in a powerful remake of the 1931 film The Champ, a deeply emotional father-son story about a washed-up boxer and his child. The director, Franco Zeffirelli, was searching for a child actor who could break hearts without trying, someone who could hold his own beside screen legend Jon Voight. They auditioned dozens of kids, many of them with more experience, but none of them had Ricky's eyes. When Ricky walked into the room, Zeffirelli reportedly said, "That's the boy." And he was right. At just 8 years old, Ricky Schroder delivered a performance in The Champ that would leave audiences and critics speechless. He wasn't merely acting, he was channeling something raw and deeply human. When The Champ premiered in 1979, it was Ricky's performance that most people remembered as they left the theater, tears still drying on their cheeks. The iconic final scene, where his character weeps over his dying father, became one of the most emotional moments in cinematic history. People didn't just watch Ricky, they felt him. And almost overnight, he became Hollywood's new golden child. He won the Golden Globe for Best New Male Star of the Year, becoming the youngest actor ever to do so. Tabloids and fan magazines called him the boy with the sad eyes. He graced covers, inspired fan clubs, and had his name spoken in households that had never even seen the movie. But while the world was mesmerized by this tiny actor's power, few stopped to ask, what does a child carry when the world starts calling him a star? That question would echo through the rest of his life. For now, though, Ricky Schroder was still just a boy from Brooklyn. With big eyes, and even bigger expectations resting silently on his small shoulders. It's rare that a child can carry the emotional weight of an entire film. It's even rarer when that child isn't just present on screen, but unforgettable. In 1979, The Champ didn't just showcase Ricky Schroder. It unveiled him. Under the direction of Franco Zeffirelli, The Champ was more than a film about a broken-down boxer and his devoted son. It was a showcase of human fragility, love, and the tragic cost of second chances. And at its heart stood Ricky, 8 years old, impossibly small beside his co-star Jon Voight, and yet, somehow the most powerful presence in every scene. His performance was raw, unfiltered, and achingly real. Audiences didn't see an actor. They saw a little boy with a trembling lip, tear-filled eyes, and a voice cracking under the weight of heartbreak. There was one moment, the final scene, when his character discovers the devastating truth about his father. Ricky collapses, sobbing, clutching Voight's lifeless body in a frantic plea to wake up. It wasn't just a scene, it was a cinematic punch to the gut. Even hardened critics, often skeptical of child actors, were stunned. Reviewers described the performance as shattering, haunting, and unlike anything seen from a child before. Roger Ebert wrote that Ricky's final scene felt as if it had been ripped from real life. Audiences left theaters shaken. People who had lost parents wept. Parents who had children held them tighter. And Hollywood had no choice but to take notice. In early 1980, the industry gathered for one of its most prestigious nights, the Golden Globe Awards. Surrounded by legends, producers, and stars with decades of experience, a small boy in a black tuxedo nervously walked onto the stage to accept the Golden Globe for New Star of the Year. Actor. He was just 9 years old. The room erupted in applause, some standing, others wiping their eyes, aware they were witnessing history. Ricky Schroder became the youngest male actor ever to receive a Golden Globe, a title that still stands today. It was a moment frozen in time. The golden statue gleamed in his tiny hands, a symbol not only of talent but of promise. He had stepped into a world where few children were ever invited, let alone honored. But behind the glitter and applause was something else, a subtle but unmistakable weight. This wasn't just a pat on the back. It was a declaration: you are not a boy anymore. You are a star now. From that night on, Ricky would no longer be seen simply as a child. He was a professional, a prodigy, an emblem of a new generation of talent. But for every golden statue handed out in Hollywood, there's often an invisible cost. Expectations. Pressure. A pace of life that asks a child to grow up before they've even had the chance to be one. Still, in that moment on stage, with cameras flashing and stars clapping, Ricky Schroder stood tall. His eyes wide, his smile shy, his place in history sealed. He wasn't just a breakout actor anymore. He was the champ. In the turbulence of the late 1970s and early 1980s, America was a country searching for emotional refuge. Vietnam had left its scars, Watergate had fractured trust in leadership, and the economy had rattled family stability. The national mood was restless, uncertain, hungry for sincerity. And then came Ricky Schroeder, with a quiet look, a soft voice, and a gaze that seemed to whisper, "Everything's going to be okay." He wasn't loud. He wasn't rebellious. He wasn't slick or manufactured. He was real. And that authenticity became his superpower. At a time when American pop culture was pivoting from the rebellious grit of the 60s and 70s to a more hopeful, family-centered ideal, Ricky's image felt like a balm to the public psyche. In a world of headlines filled with conflict and cynicism, his face was pure comfort. He was the boy every grandmother wanted to bake cookies for. The boy every parent wanted their child to be friends with. And quietly, the boy that Hollywood hoped would help restore the idea that fame could still be innocent. Magazine covers called him America's Golden Boy. His shaggy blonde hair and round cheeks appeared on the pages of Tiger Beat, People, TV Guide, and more. Even those who had never seen the champ felt they knew him. There was a stillness in his expression that photographers adored, a calm that seemed unshaken by the machinery of fame. But make no mistake, Ricky Schroeder wasn't just a fleeting sensation. His appeal ran deeper. He came to represent an idealized version of boyhood, gentle but strong, vulnerable yet brave. In a decade that began to celebrate family-friendly entertainment once more, he became a face you could trust. A face that could cry on screen without shame. A face that could break your heart and mend it in the same scene. Hollywood had its teen idols and tabloid darlings, but Ricky wasn't either. He was something rarer, a child star who carried gravitas, who seemed to bring a piece of the real world into every performance. His presence reassured a nation adjusting to change, quietly suggesting that maybe, just maybe, there was still something sacred in the innocence of childhood. And that kind of presence doesn't come from training. It doesn't come from coaching or charisma alone. It comes from something within, a depth of spirit not often found in someone so young. So while the culture around him shifted, technology rising, politics changing, music evolving, Ricky Schroeder remained, for a time, a symbol of emotional stillness. He reminded people of simpler times, even if those times never really existed. And as long as his face remained on screen, many clung to the belief that the good in the world hadn't disappeared. It had just grown smaller, quieter, and found a home in a child with wide eyes and a gentle smile. If the champ made Ricky Schroeder a household name, it was television that cemented his place in America's living rooms, night after night, laugh after laugh. In 1982, just a few years after his breakout role on the big screen, Ricky took on a new challenge: weekly television, starring as the lead in a fresh, family-focused sitcom that would become a cultural staple of the 1980s. The show was called Silver Spoons, and it was a perfect fit. Ricky played Ricky Stratton, the son of a wealthy, playful, video game-loving man-child of a father, played by Joel Higgins, who suddenly finds himself responsible for raising a son he didn't know he had. The premise was charming, lighthearted, and anchored in a dreamlike vision of childhood. And yet, it worked because it gave Ricky room to evolve, not just as an actor, but as a growing boy navigating real-life changes in front of millions. In Silver Spoons, Ricky wasn't a tragic figure like in The Champ. He wasn't crying on the floor or carrying emotional trauma. This was something else. This was joy. Audiences adored watching Ricky move through a world filled with toy trains, arcade machines, and father-son bonding that felt both nostalgic and aspirational. The show quickly became a hit, thanks in no small part to Ricky's natural charm, timing, and ability to ground the fantasy in real emotion. Over the course of 5 seasons, from 1982 to 1987, viewers watched Ricky transform on screen, from a wide-eyed preteen into a thoughtful, self-assured teenager. It was a rare kind of coming of age, one where every growth spurt, every change in voice, every shift in demeanor was captured and broadcast in real time. Behind the scenes, the transition wasn't always easy. Television production brought a relentless pace. Scripts, rehearsals, rewrites, promotion, press appearances. It was a grind most adults found exhausting. For a teenage boy still figuring out who he was, it was a strange way to grow up. But Ricky handled it with professionalism beyond his years. Crew members and co-stars often remarked on his maturity, his kindness, and his grounded attitude, especially remarkable in a world that often devoured its youngest talents. During his Silver Spoons years, Ricky also began to navigate something else, the shift from child star to teenage heartthrob. Fan mail poured in. Teen magazines featured his face monthly, sometimes weekly. He was invited to award shows, talk shows, even offered movie roles that would have catapulted him into teen idol status. And yet, Ricky remained selective. He avoided roles that felt shallow or exploitative. He wasn't interested in chasing fleeting attention. Even as he rode the wave of sitcom success, there was always something introspective about Ricky, something that suggested he was aware of how quickly the spotlight could turn harsh. Silver Spoons ended in 1987, when Ricky was still just 17 years old. By then, he had grown taller, his voice had deepened, and the round-faced child of the champ was a memory. What remained was a young man with experience beyond his age, one who had already lived lifetimes under the glow of studio lights. The sitcom years had given Ricky something more than fame. They gave him structure, consistency, and a sense of who he might be outside the solemn intensity of dramatic cinema. For the American public, Silver Spoons was comfort TV, light, cheerful, and sincere. For Ricky, it was a rare bridge between childhood stardom and adult credibility. He had not just survived the transition. He had done it gracefully. And yet, as is so often the case in Hollywood, the next chapter would demand even more: reinvention, risk, and the delicate process of growing up under the permanent gaze of a camera lens. Fame is rarely kind to the in-between years. And for a child star like Ricky Schroeder, the spotlight didn't dim as he grew older. It simply became harder to stand beneath. After years of being America's golden boy, Ricky entered his teenage years with a weight few people ever have to carry: the burden of staying exactly who the world wanted him to be, while everything about him was naturally changing. Behind the scenes of Silver Spoons, and even after the show ended, Ricky was no longer the fresh-faced boy with wide eyes and soft features. He was getting taller. His voice was deepening. The innocence that once defined him was beginning to fade, replaced by the quiet storm of adolescence. But Hollywood doesn't always welcome that evolution. Not when you've built your image on childhood charm. Producers, agents, and executives still wanted the Ricky from the champ, from those glossy magazine covers, from the boy who made America cry. They wanted him frozen in time. He, on the other hand, was trying to figure out who he actually was. There's a unique kind of discomfort that comes with being watched as you change. For most teenagers, awkward stages are something endured privately, in the mirror, in the quiet of one's room, or maybe during a clumsy conversation at school. But for Ricky, every growth spurt, every pimple, every moment of self-doubt was shadowed by the expectations of millions. In interviews, he began to express discomfort with his public image. He didn't want to be seen only as the cute kid or the sad-eyed boy. He wanted depth. He wanted roles with edge, with substance. He wanted to be seen as a real actor, not just a memory in reruns. But transitioning out of childhood stardom is notoriously treacherous. The same audiences who adored him as a boy weren't always ready to accept him as a man. offers dried up or typecast him. Scripts presented him with shallow, forgettable roles. The kind that seemed more focused on nostalgia than on growth. And as the roles became fewer, the pressure grew heavier. How do you prove your worth in an industry that only remembers who you were? There were whispers in the tabloids about Ricky's internal struggle. Not scandal. Not misbehavior. Just a quiet, persistent identity crisis. He enrolled in college briefly, trying to step away from the industry, to reclaim something normal. He dated, made friends, explored who he was away from the lens. But it wasn't easy. Being famous as a child had taught him discipline, professionalism, and how to make others happy. What it hadn't taught him was how to make himself happy. Ricky was thoughtful, private, introspective. Not the kind of star who chased parties or headlines. And yet, that very restraint often left him overlooked in an industry driven by spectacle. What emerged in those years was not a fall from grace, but a slow and quiet reckoning. If he was no longer the boy with the big eyes, who was he now? This phase, unseen by many fans, was perhaps the most human chapter of Ricky Schroder's life. It wasn't marked by scandal, but by solitude. Not by failure, but by reflection. It was the part of the story where the applause had faded. And all that remained was the soft, steady question of self. It's easy to applaud someone for their talent. But it takes more to recognize their quiet strength in the seasons where that talent isn't being showcased. For Ricky, those years weren't glamorous, but they were necessary. A time to grow. A time to grieve the child he could never be again. And a time to imagine what kind of man he still had time to become. At some point, every child star must make a decision. Will they chase the echo of their former fame? Or will they confront the uncomfortable, often uphill climb toward reinvention? For Ricky Schroder, the answer was clear. He wasn't interested in nostalgia. He wanted to build something new. In the years following his sitcom success, Ricky stepped away from the spotlight, but not out of retreat, out of strategy. He understood the weight of perception. The public still saw the boy from Silver Spoons or The Champ, and casting directors often couldn't imagine him outside of that frame. But Ricky wasn't content being a relic of childhood stardom. He wanted to earn his place again, this time as an adult, on his own terms. It wasn't easy. Hollywood isn't quick to forgive youthful fame. It has a long memory and a short attention span. But Ricky was patient. His break from tradition came in a role that would surprise everyone and redefine his career. In the mid-1990s, he joined the cast of one of television's most acclaimed and gritty dramas, NYPD Blue. Gone were the soft lights and laugh tracks. This was raw, sharp-edged storytelling, and Ricky stepped into it as Detective Danny Sorensen. A character layered with complexity, trauma, and quiet intensity. From his very first appearance, it was clear. This was not a boy trying to act like a man. This was a man acting, fully, deeply, convincingly. The performance was met with praise. Fans of the show, initially skeptical, began to see Ricky in a new light. He wasn't relying on charm or childhood fame. He was commanding the screen with presence, restraint, and craft. The role demanded vulnerability. It explored grief, justice, addiction, and morality. And Ricky delivered, episode after episode, slowly reshaping his image in the public eye. But acting wasn't enough. Behind the scenes, Ricky had begun to fall in love with the art of storytelling itself, not just through performance, but through vision. He started directing, producing, writing. He wanted to tell stories that mattered. Stories rooted in truth, sacrifice, and human strength. In 2004, he released a small independent film called Black Cloud, which he wrote, directed, and produced. The film followed a Native American boxer fighting for dignity, identity, and personal redemption. It was a deeply personal project, filled with authenticity and quiet emotion. Ricky poured himself into every frame. And the film, though modest in scale, was a clear statement. I am more than what I was. I am an artist now. He also worked on documentary projects, particularly ones centered around military stories and American resilience, subjects he approached with both respect and curiosity. There was nothing flashy about this phase of Ricky's career. No tabloid drama. No headlines chasing controversy. Just consistent, disciplined work, shaped by a man who had grown up in front of us and refused to be boxed in by it. Over time, a new kind of respect began to form. Not the adoration reserved for child stars, but something more grounded. Admiration for his tenacity, his integrity, and his refusal to be forgotten. While other child stars had vanished or been consumed by fame, Ricky carved a quieter path, less glamorous, perhaps, but more honest. And perhaps that's what made it so powerful. He didn't try to erase his past. He honored it. And then he built beyond it. In a world that often reduces people to a single chapter of their lives, Ricky Schroeder proved there's value in turning the page, no matter how many people insist on rereading the first one. Every public figure eventually faces the moment when their private life spills into public view. For someone like Ricky Schroeder, who had grown up under a microscope, that line had always been thin, nearly invisible. Throughout much of his career, Ricky had been admired not just for his talent, but for his quiet discipline. He wasn't a fixture at wild parties. He didn't chase headlines. He seemed, for years, to be the rare exception to the child star curse. But life, real life, doesn't always fit the frame of a perfect narrative. In 1992, at the age of 22, Ricky married Andrea Bernard, a woman outside the Hollywood spotlight. Together, they built what appeared to be a stable, loving home. They had 4 children, a full house, a quieter life, far from the glare of the cameras. For a time, it seemed like Ricky had found balance. He took on fewer roles, focused on family, and channeled much of his energy into writing, directing, and producing projects that kept him behind the camera, rather than in front of it. He bought a ranch. He rode horses. He leaned into a slower, simpler kind of living. But beneath the surface, like with many lives lived off camera, there were tensions that even years of discipline couldn't contain. In 2016, after nearly 24 years of marriage, Ricky and Andrea divorced. It was, by most accounts, a quiet separation. No public battles, no sensational headlines, just 2 people parting ways after a long journey together. But in the years that followed, the tabloid shadows began to creep closer. Ricky, who had once been the picture of boyhood innocence and later, respectful adulthood, found himself in the news again, not for his work, but for his behavior. In 2019, he was arrested twice within a matter of weeks, both times for alleged domestic disturbances. Though charges were ultimately dropped and details kept private, the headlines alone were enough to jolt the public. The internet, never known for its mercy, quickly resurfaced decades of old images: the Champ, silver spoons, teen magazine covers. And then, beside them, mugshots. It was a stark contrast, one that rattled fans who had grown up with him. To many, Ricky's image had always been clean, composed, even idealistic. Now, it was complicated, human, flawed. And that, perhaps, was the hardest part. Not that he had stumbled, but that the stumble reminded people he wasn't who he used to be. He was a man in his 40s, a father, a figure shaped by decades of quiet pressure. In interviews that followed, Ricky spoke less and less. He retreated from the mainstream, focusing on independent media, personal projects, and causes he felt passionately about, including veteran affairs and rural American life. But the warmth he had once received from the public seemed cooler now. Not gone, but cautious. That's the strange paradox of fame. People want their heroes to be human, but only to a point. Step too far out of the mold, and the world starts rewriting your legacy. Still, there's something to be said for a man who doesn't run from the shadows. Ricky Schroder never issued grand press tours or public apologies. He never played the victim or tried to sanitize his past. Instead, he faced it, quietly. And he kept moving forward. Was his image tarnished? Perhaps. But maybe that image was never the whole story to begin with. Maybe Ricky wasn't the forever boy Hollywood had imagined. Maybe he was something more real. Someone who, like all of us, carried his highs and lows with equal weight. And in a world that often devours its stars at the first sign of imperfection, Ricky Schroder's story reminds us of something crucial. That growing up in public doesn't guarantee you'll grow up perfectly. But it does give you the chance, if you're strong enough, to grow up authentically. The bright lights of Hollywood have a way of pulling stars close, then pushing them away, sometimes repeatedly, sometimes for good. For Ricky Schroder, that pull and push have defined much of his life. But today, Ricky stands in a different place altogether. Having weathered the storms of childhood fame, teenage transitions, personal challenges, and tabloid scrutiny, he has deliberately stepped away from the relentless glare of the spotlight. He has chosen intentional quiet. Away from the blockbuster premieres, the late-night talk shows, and the flashing cameras, Ricky has carved out a life that is deeply personal and creatively fulfilling on his own terms. His focus has shifted, less on fame, more on meaningful stories. In recent years, Ricky has been involved in directing and producing projects that reflect his passions, stories about resilience, identity, and the human spirit. He has shown a particular interest in military-themed films and documentaries, honoring veterans and exploring the sacrifices behind service. This commitment speaks to a man who has found purpose beyond personal glory. Away from Hollywood's noise, he's also devoted time to family and to causes close to his heart. As a father, he embraces the quieter joys of life, the kind that don't make headlines but fill a life with meaning. When Ricky speaks about his early fame, he does so with a nuanced perspective. There is no bitterness or longing for what could have been. Instead, he reflects with a mature, almost philosophical understanding. Fame, he acknowledges, is fleeting. Childhood is precious and fragile. And the public's gaze, while intoxicating, can be unforgiving. He once said in an interview, "Growing up in the spotlight teaches you a lot about who you really are, because you don't have the luxury of hiding. You either learn to be true to yourself, or you lose yourself completely." That truth has guided Ricky through decades of reinvention and quiet resilience. Though he may no longer be the star of primetime or the pages of teen magazines, his influence lingers, in the memories of those who grew up watching him, and in the respect earned from those who admire his journey beyond the fame. Today, Ricky Schroder is not just an actor or a former child star. He is a storyteller, a filmmaker, and above all, a man who has reclaimed his narrative. In a world obsessed with reinvention, his story reminds us that sometimes the greatest success is simply finding peace with who you are. And in the soft twilight of his career, Ricky stands as a testament to the idea that the brightest stars don't always shine the loudest. They sometimes glow quietly, from within. As Ricky Schroeder stepped away from the dazzling lights to redefine his path beyond the screen, another young star was already making waves in Hollywood, one whose journey would be just as captivating, yet marked by a very different set of challenges. Enter Tatum O'Neal, a girl born into fame, whose early triumphs and trials would shape a story as complex and compelling as any on the silver screen. From the very moment she took her first breath, Tatum O'Neal was destined to be a figure woven deeply into Hollywood's intricate tapestry. Born on November 5, 1963, she entered the world not just as any child, but as the daughter of one of Hollywood's most charismatic leading men, Ryan O'Neal. This lineage meant that from an early age, Tatum wasn't just growing up, she was growing up in the spotlight. Hollywood wasn't just a place for her family. It was the very air they breathed, the rhythm of their lives, the backdrop to their everyday. The glitz, the glamour, the endless cameras. They were all part of Tatum's earliest memories. But unlike many child stars who are suddenly thrust into fame, Tatum's exposure to celebrity came as a natural extension of her family life. Her father, Ryan, had already carved a name for himself with hits like Love Story and Paper Moon, the latter a film that would become a defining moment for both their careers. Growing up amid agents, directors, and paparazzi, Tatum's world was saturated with the workings of the entertainment industry long before she ever stepped in front of a camera. Her childhood wasn't secluded or shielded. It was lived alongside movie sets, premieres, and the frenetic pace of Hollywood's golden years. This early immersion gave Tatum a unique advantage: familiarity. She understood the language of the industry, the unspoken rules, the demands, and the temptations. But it also came with its own weight. Being Ryan O'Neal's daughter meant expectations, not just to succeed, but to live up to a legacy. It meant carrying a spotlight that often blurred the line between family and fame. From a young age, Tatum saw the sacrifices and struggles behind the glamorous facade. She witnessed the highs and lows of a family entangled in the very business that would launch her own career. And when the moment arrived for her to step into her own light, she did so not as a stranger to Hollywood, but as its very bloodline. At just 10 years old, Tatum O'Neal achieved something nearly unheard of in Hollywood, a feat so extraordinary that it would forever define her career and life. In 1974, she won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress for her role as Addie Loggins in Paper Moon, a film that paired her with her father, Ryan O'Neal, in a hauntingly tender portrayal of a con man and his precocious daughter. The accolade made her the youngest person ever to receive an Oscar, a distinction that cast a long and complicated shadow over her subsequent years. Winning an Oscar before adolescence was, by all accounts, a miraculous achievement. It cemented her status not just as a promising child actor, but as a true prodigy in an industry often skeptical of youth. But with that glory came an immense, invisible weight. At 10, most children worry about school, friends, and growing up. Tatum, however, had suddenly become a symbol of talent, promise, and Hollywood's rarest success stories. The spotlight, while dazzling, was also relentless. Her win wasn't just a personal triumph. It was a public declaration that she was exceptional, expected to carry that brilliance forward. This early acclaim brought opportunities aplenty. Offers for roles flooded in. Magazines wanted interviews. Talk shows invited her to share her experience. Critics and audiences alike waited eagerly for her next move. Yet beneath the applause lay the quiet tension of expectation. How does a child navigate the pressure of living up to an Oscar-winning performance? How does she balance the innocence of childhood with the demands of stardom? For Tatum, this duality was at the heart of her experience. On set, she was professional beyond her years, absorbing scripts, delivering lines with a maturity that belied her age. Off set, she was still a young girl, facing the challenges of adolescence in an adult world. This juxtaposition often left her feeling caught between two worlds. While the industry celebrated her talent, it sometimes overlooked her need for normalcy. The Oscar win was both a blessing and a burden. It opened doors, but also set a ceiling she struggled to break through. In interviews years later, Tatum spoke candidly about the paradox of early success. She acknowledged the privilege of her achievement, but also the isolation it brought. Winning the highest honor in film at such a tender age meant she was never just a kid playing make-believe. She was a professional, an icon, a standard against which others would be measured. And that kind of pressure, while invisible to many, shaped much of her teenage years and beyond. The world saw the trophy, the red carpet, the glowing reviews. But behind the scenes was a young girl learning to find her own identity amidst the glare. An identity not defined solely by an Oscar statue, but by the person she was becoming. As Tatum O'Neal blossomed from a precocious child actor into a teenage star, the public's gaze sharpened, and so did her persona. No longer just the sweet-faced Oscar winner, she began to carve out an identity that was both captivating and complex. A mix of innocence and rebellion that fascinated America. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, Hollywood was in a period of transformation. The golden era of child stars was giving way to new, edgier personalities, and Tatum found herself navigating this shifting landscape with a mix of grace and boldness. Her style, both on and off screen, reflected a youthful defiance. She was no longer content to be the good girl, typecast that Hollywood often reserved for former child actors. Instead, Tatum embraced a flair that was fresh, daring, and unapologetically her own. Fashion magazines took notice. Her distinctive mix of bohemian chic and Hollywood glamour made her a style icon for a generation. She wore her hair with attitude, paired vintage pieces with modern trends, and carried herself with a confidence that seemed both natural and deliberate. But it wasn't just about fashion. It was about presence. The cameras loved her because she was unpredictable, in a way that felt authentic, not manufactured. Her interviews were candid, sometimes cheeky. She spoke openly about the pressures of growing up famous, the complexities of her family life, and her desire to break free from the expectations placed upon her. This honesty only deepened the public's fascination. Fans saw a young woman who was navigating the highs and lows of fame with raw emotion and fearless honesty. At times, she played the role of America's sweetheart, warm, approachable, charming. At others, she leaned into the rebel persona, unapologetic, edgy, and unwilling to conform. This duality made her magnetic. Hollywood tabloids chronicled her escapades, relationships, and occasional clashes with authority, but they never painted her as a villain. Instead, she was viewed as a complex young woman trying to find her footing in a world that demanded perfection. Her off-screen charisma extended to friendships with other stars, her presence at parties, and a magnetic energy that drew people in. Yet beneath the surface, Tatum's boldness was also a shield. It protected her from the vulnerabilities of growing up in an unforgiving industry. Her rebellious moments were, in many ways, expressions of a young woman asserting control over her own narrative. In a culture quick to package and sell celebrity personas, Tatum refused to be easily categorized. She was both the darling and the wild card, a combination that kept audiences intrigued and critics watching closely. This period in her life was a roller coaster, filled with dazzling highs and turbulent lows. But through it all, Tatum O'Neal remained undeniably captivating. Her journey from Hollywood's youngest Oscar winner to a fiercely independent young woman is a testament to the complexities of fame, and the strength required to navigate it on one's own terms. Behind the glimmering lights of Hollywood and the applause of audiences, Not all stories unfold as fairy tales. For Tatum O'Neal, the reality of growing up was often marked by a complex and tumultuous relationship with her father, Ryan O'Neal, a man whose own brilliance and flaws cast long shadows over their family. Ryan O'Neal was a star of undeniable charisma and talent, yet his personal life was riddled with volatility. His struggles with addiction and emotional turbulence were no secret to those close to him. For Tatum, this meant that the very figure who introduced her to the magic of movies was also a source of deep instability. Their relationship was one of profound love, but also of pain and conflict. In interviews years later, Tatum has spoken candidly about the challenges of growing up in a household where affection and chaos often coexisted. The fairy tale image of the golden Hollywood family was, in reality, fractured by episodes of tension, unpredictability, and the emotional toll of her father's struggles. This environment made the already difficult task of childhood fame even more complicated. While Tatum was navigating the pressures of an early Oscar win and public expectations, she was simultaneously coping with the emotional roller coaster at home. Her father's battles with substance abuse sometimes left her feeling vulnerable and exposed. It was a childhood shadowed by the knowledge that behind the glamour, her family was fighting private battles. Their bond, though tested, was also deeply rooted in connection. Ryan's affection for Tatum was genuine, often expressed in moments of tenderness that contrasted sharply with periods of distance and conflict. This complicated dynamic shaped much of Tatum's emotional landscape. The instability at home contributed to a growing sense of isolation, a feeling that many child stars know all too well. She was often left to navigate her own path through adolescence, seeking stability in a world that seemed anything but stable. As the years went on, their relationship would be marked by highs and lows, moments of reconciliation and estrangement. Yet, despite the fractures, there remained an undeniable thread of family loyalty and love. Tatum's story is a reminder that fame rarely insulates from personal struggle. Beneath the red carpets and flashing cameras are real people, grappling with complex relationships, pain, and the quest for healing. Her fractured fairy tale is a testament to resilience, the strength it takes to pursue one's dreams while carrying the weight of a turbulent past. And it is this very resilience that continues to define Tatum O'Neal's journey, long after the spotlight has moved on. Fame, especially when earned at a young age, is a double-edged sword, offering dazzling opportunities but exacting a heavy toll. For Tatum O'Neal, the early spotlight came with a price far greater than most could imagine. The very industry that celebrated her brilliance was also one of the most unforgiving, and growing up fast in Hollywood's relentless gaze left scars that would take years to confront. By her teenage years and into early adulthood, Tatum found herself grappling with the harsh realities of addiction, an all-too common struggle among child stars attempting to navigate a world fraught with pressure, expectation, and personal pain. Her battles with substance abuse were well documented, often making headlines alongside her professional efforts to reclaim her place in the industry. These struggles weren't just personal battles. They reflected the darker side of fame, the isolation, the emotional turmoil, and the challenge of balancing public persona with private demons. Despite these challenges, Tatum showed remarkable resilience. She repeatedly sought help and made numerous attempts at comebacks, returning to film and television with the determination to prove that she was more than her past mistakes. Roles in projects like Little Darlings and Rescue Me showcased her enduring talent, even as the media spotlight remained unforgiving. But the path was never linear. Each attempt at resurgence was met with the realities of addiction and the complexities of recovery. Growing up too fast in a ruthless industry meant that the traditional safety nets of childhood were often absent. Support systems were fragile or inconsistent, and the constant public scrutiny left little room for private healing. Tatum's story is emblematic of the high cost of youthful glory, a price paid in lost innocence, fractured relationships, and battles fought behind closed doors. Yet, amid the challenges, she never lost sight of her own strength. Her journey through addiction and recovery is one of courage, showing that even those who seem to have it all can face profound struggles and still find a way forward. It's a narrative of redemption, reminding us that the brightest stars can fall, but also that falling is not the end of the story. Tatum O'Neal's life offers a candid look at the complex intersection of fame, vulnerability, and the human capacity for resilience. Through her struggles and comebacks, she has become more than just a former child star. She is a living testament to the power of perseverance in the face of overwhelming odds. In the unforgiving glare of the spotlight, few stories unfold without friction. For Tatum O'Neal, that glare often morphed into a harsh, relentless spotlight, one wielded not just by fans and critics, but by a voracious tabloid media eager for scandal and sensation. As a child star turned young adult navigating the turbulent waters of fame, Tatum quickly found herself at the center of media obsession. The public's appetite for her life's highs and lows became insatiable, as tabloids dissected every detail, from her family dramas to her struggles with addiction. Headlines often painted her as a troubled starlet caught in a cycle of personal challenges, reducing a complex woman to mere gossip fodder. The cameras lingered long after the applause faded, capturing moments meant to be private and twisting them into public spectacle. Yet, what could have crushed many others became a crucible for Tatum's resilience. She learned early that surviving Hollywood's tabloids meant mastering the art of reinvention. Instead of retreating, she chose to confront her narrative head-on, embracing new roles behind and in front of the camera. This period of reinvention was not just about career moves. It was a profound personal evolution. Tatum used the media storm as motivation to reclaim her story, shifting focus towards projects that allowed her to express herself authentically. Whether through acting in independent films or authoring candid memoirs, she transformed the narrative from victim to survivor. Her publicized struggles, once weaponized by gossip columns, became touchstones of her strength, a testament to her enduring spirit. Through it all, Tatum remained unapologetically herself, refusing to be confined by the narrow boxes the media tried to place her in. Her resilience was a beacon, demonstrating that even amidst relentless scrutiny and public judgment, it is possible to rise, rebuild, and redefine success. Today, Tatum O'Neal's story is one of survival, marked by pain, yes, but also by the power of reinvention and the unyielding pursuit of selfhood. Her journey serves as a reminder that behind every headline lies a human being, capable not only of falling but also of rising, time and time again. At a pivotal moment in her life, Tatum O'Neal took a bold and courageous step. She decided to take control of her story in the most literal way possible, by writing it herself. Her memoir, A Paper Life, published in 2004, peeled back the polished Hollywood veneer to reveal a deeply personal and often painful journey behind the headlines. The book was more than just a celebrity tell-all. It was a raw, unfiltered account of a woman who had navigated the dizzying highs of early fame, the turbulence of a fractured family, and the relentless grip of addiction. With remarkable honesty, Tatum chronicled her struggles with substance abuse, the emotional scars left by her upbringing, and the impact of living much of her life under public scrutiny. What made A Paper Life stand out was its vulnerability. Rather than seeking sympathy or blame, Tatum embraced the complexities of her experiences, acknowledging both her mistakes and the resilience that helped her survive. The memoir became a form of healing, a way to make sense of a life that had often felt out of control. Through her writing, she found a voice that was authentically hers, one that rejected the tabloid caricatures and instead painted a nuanced portrait of pain, strength, and growth. Readers and critics alike praised the book for its candidness and depth. It resonated not only with fans of Hollywood stories but with anyone who had faced adversity and sought redemption. Tatum's willingness to share her truth invited empathy and understanding, breaking down the barriers between celebrity and humanity. The memoir also marked a turning point in her public image. No longer just a troubled child star or tabloid subject, she emerged as a thoughtful author and a woman reclaiming her narrative on her own terms. A Paper Life stands as a testament to the power of storytelling, not just as entertainment, but as a path to self-discovery and healing. Through her words, Tatum O'Neal showed that while fame can fracture a life, it can never define it entirely. Her story is one of courage, the courage to confront the past, to expose vulnerabilities, and ultimately, to rewrite her future. As the years have passed, Tatum O'Neal has evolved into a figure of resilience and reinvention, one whose story is not only about early fame and struggle but also about growth, advocacy, and a return to the craft she loves. Today, Tatum stands as a testament to the power of perseverance and self-discovery, embodying the hard-won wisdom earned through decades in the public eye and personal battles. After stepping away from the relentless glare of Hollywood in her younger years, she has gradually returned to acting with a renewed sense of purpose and authenticity. Her recent roles reflect a maturity and depth that resonate with audiences who have witnessed her journey from childhood star to seasoned artist. But Tatum's impact extends far beyond the screen. She has become an outspoken advocate for addiction recovery and mental health awareness, using her platform to shine a light on issues that affected her deeply. By sharing her own experiences, she helps destigmatize struggles that often remain in the shadows. Her advocacy work offers hope and inspiration to many facing similar challenges, turning her past hardships into a force for positive change. In interviews and public appearances, Tatum carries herself with a grounded humility and an openness that invites connection. Her wisdom is palpable, a blend of hard-earned lessons about fame, family, and self-acceptance. She speaks candidly about the importance of forgiveness, both of others and oneself, and about the ongoing journey toward healing. Tatum's story is one of continuous evolution. She refuses to be defined solely by her past, whether the accolades or the adversities, but rather embraces a holistic view of her life. As an artist, advocate, and individual, she continues to grow, inspiring others through her honesty and resilience. In a culture often obsessed with youth and perfection, Tatum O'Neal stands as a reminder that true strength comes from embracing every chapter of one's story, the highs and the lows alike. Her journey is far from over, but what is clear is that today's Tatum is a woman who has reclaimed her narrative, living life on her own terms with grace, courage, and authenticity. As Tatum O'Neal forged her path through Hollywood's turbulent spotlight, navigating the highs and lows of early fame, another extraordinary talent was quietly beginning her own journey, one marked not only by early success but by an unmistakable intellectual fire and fierce determination that would set her apart from the very start. Jodie Foster emerged as a true child prodigy, not simply content with the trappings of youthful stardom, but driven by a powerful intellect and an unyielding work ethic. Born in 1962 in Los Angeles, Foster was immersed in the world of entertainment almost from infancy. Her earliest appearances were in commercials and on television shows, including those produced by Disney, where she honed her craft with a precision rare for someone so young. Unlike many child actors swept up by the excitement of the industry, Jodie exhibited an extraordinary maturity and focus. Her ability to absorb complex roles and deliver performances with depth far beyond her years quickly caught the attention of directors and casting agents alike. But it wasn't just her talent that made her stand out. It was the intensity with which she approached her work, combined with a sharp intellect that was evident even behind the scenes. Jodie was a rare blend of precociousness and power, a young girl who understood that her career would require not only charm and charisma, but also resilience and savvy. Her early roles, from the innocent sweetness of a Disney child star to more challenging parts in films like Taxi Driver, demonstrated a range and depth that set her apart from her peers. This foundation laid the groundwork for a career defined by thoughtful choices and groundbreaking performances. Jodie Foster was not merely a child star riding a wave of popularity. She was a force of nature, ready to break molds and redefine what it meant to grow up in Hollywood. Her story is one of intellect meeting opportunity, and ambition tempered with discipline. From those first commercials to the cusp of cinematic greatness, Jodie's journey as a precocious and powerful young artist was only just beginning. At the tender age of just 12, Jodie Foster took on a role that would forever change the trajectory of her career, and expose her to the intense scrutiny and psychological pressures that often accompany early fame. Her portrayal of the young Iris Steensma in Martin Scorsese's Taxi Driver, 1976, was both haunting and hailed as a masterpiece, captivating audiences and critics alike with a depth of emotion that belied her youth. Taxi Driver was no ordinary film. It was a dark, gritty exploration of urban alienation and moral decay, and Jodie's character was at its unsettling heart, a child caught in the shadows of a broken world. The role was controversial, not only because of the mature themes but also due to the unsettling nature of the scenes involving her character. For a 12-year-old actress, navigating such a complex and disturbing role demanded an emotional maturity that was rare, and it came at a psychological cost. The film thrust Jodie into the unforgiving glare of the spotlight. Suddenly, she was no longer just a child actor. She was a symbol of Hollywood's willingness to confront difficult and often uncomfortable truths. The praise was immense. Her performance earned critical acclaim and positioned her as one of the most promising young talents in the industry. But behind the accolades was the weight of early fame and the personal toll it took. Jodie herself has spoken about the challenges of dealing with such a role at a young age, and the lasting impact it had on her understanding of both the craft and the darker sides of the entertainment world. The psychological demands of embodying such a troubled character, combined with the intense media attention that followed, created a pressure cooker environment. This experience could have derailed a less resilient child star. Yet, for Jodie, it was a defining moment that showcased not only her extraordinary talent but also her emotional strength. It was the moment she proved she could handle roles that delved into the complexities of human nature, no matter how challenging or controversial. Taxi Driver marked the beginning of a career that would be characterized by fearless choices and a refusal to be confined by Hollywood's typical expectations for young actresses. But it also introduced her early to the spotlight's sharp edge, a place where acclaim and scrutiny exist side by side, and where the line between success and vulnerability is often razor-thin. In this crucible, Jodie Foster began to forge the resilience and intellect that would carry her through decades of remarkable work. As Jodie Foster's star ascended with every nuanced performance, the spotlight grew ever brighter, bringing not just acclaim but an intense and often unwanted public scrutiny that would forever alter the course of her life. One of the most harrowing chapters came in 1981, when John Hinckley Jr., a troubled young man obsessed with Foster and her role in Taxi Driver, attempted to assassinate then-President Ronald Reagan in a desperate effort to impress her. This shocking incident thrust Jodie into a maelstrom of media frenzy and public fascination that she never sought and would have preferred to avoid. Suddenly, she was not only an actress but a symbol of the dangerous intersection between celebrity and obsession. The media's relentless focus painted a complicated picture, a young woman caught in the crosshairs of someone else's troubled mind, while simultaneously scrutinizing her every move, every statement, and every personal detail. For Jodie, this was an overwhelming and deeply personal ordeal. While she had built her career on portraying complex characters and navigating the demands of fame, nothing could prepare her for the reality of living under such intense public attention tied to a violent act she was tangentially involved in. The incident added layers of anxiety and caution to her public appearances. She became acutely aware of the vulnerabilities that come with celebrity and the often uncomfortable loss of privacy. Her life was no longer hers alone. It belonged to the public's gaze, sometimes dissected and sensationalized without regard for the human behind the headlines. Yet, in the face of this media storm, Jodie demonstrated remarkable grace and strength. She continued to pursue her craft with unwavering focus, refusing to let the shadow of the incident define her. Her choice to maintain privacy and handle the situation with dignity resonated with many, reinforcing her reputation as a fiercely intelligent and composed individual. The episode also highlighted broader issues about the price of fame, the way public figures can become unwilling symbols or targets in the narratives crafted by society and the media. Jodie Foster's experience stands as a sobering reminder of the delicate balance celebrities must navigate between their public personas and their private lives. Her story is one not just of talent and achievement, but of survival amid the unpredictable dangers that come with extraordinary visibility. Through it all, she emerged more determined, using her voice carefully and thoughtfully while continuing to build a legacy that transcends tabloid headlines. While the world admired Jodie Foster for her captivating performances and poise under pressure, few truly grasped the remarkable intellect and discipline that defined her off-screen life. Far from the typical Hollywood narrative, Jodie pursued her education with a seriousness that set her apart from many of her peers, demonstrating a dedication to knowledge that would shape both her career and her identity. In 1985, she graduated magna cum laude from Yale University with a degree in literature, a feat that underscored her commitment to intellectual growth amidst the demands of an already successful acting career. This achievement was no small feat. Balancing rigorous academics with the relentless pace of Hollywood required not only intelligence but extraordinary discipline and focus. At Yale, Jodie cultivated a breadth of knowledge and a depth of understanding that informed her artistic choices and gave her a nuanced perspective on the roles she selected. Her academic journey also represented a deliberate act of self-definition. In an industry often obsessed with youth and appearance, she chose to invest in her mind, carving out a space where she could grow beyond the constraints of fame. This pursuit of education was a powerful statement that talent is multifaceted, and true artistry is rooted as much in intellect as in emotion. Equally notable was Jodie's unwavering commitment to privacy. Throughout her life, she has guarded her personal world with fierce determination, keeping details about her family, relationships, and beliefs largely out of the public eye. In an era where celebrity oversharing is commonplace, Jodie's discretion stands as a testament to her desire for control over her narrative and the boundaries she sets between her public persona and private self. This balance between brilliance and privacy allowed her to navigate Hollywood on her own terms. She refused to be reduced to tabloid fodder or a simplistic archetype. Instead, Jodie Foster emerged as a multidimensional figure. An actress, a scholar, and a person of profound depth. Her academic accomplishments reinforced the power of intellect in a world that often prizes image above substance. This blend of brains and beauty, intellect and artistry, continues to define her legacy and inspire new generations of performers who seek to forge meaningful careers without sacrificing their authenticity or privacy. As Jodie Foster emerged from the crucible of child stardom and academic achievement, she faced a challenge that has thwarted many young actors: the transition from beloved child actor to respected adult artist. But Jodie was not one to leave such a crucial career juncture to chance. With intentionality and vision, she set out to carve a new path, one that would not only redefine her image, but also demonstrate her remarkable range and depth as a performer. The early 1990s marked a turning point with two career-defining performances that cemented her status as one of Hollywood's most formidable actresses. Her role in The Accused, 1988, was a raw, unflinching portrayal of a woman fighting for justice after a brutal assault. In this film, Jodie displayed a fearless commitment to embodying complex, challenging characters who confront society's darkest realities. Her performance earned her the Academy Award for Best Actress, a powerful validation of her skill and the seriousness with which she approached her craft. But she didn't stop there. Shortly thereafter, in 1991, she delivered what many consider one of the most iconic performances in cinematic history, Clarice Starling in The Silence of the Lambs. Taking on the role of an intelligent, determined FBI trainee facing off against one of film's most chilling villains, Jodie once again demonstrated her ability to inhabit psychologically demanding roles with nuance and strength. This performance not only won her a second Academy Award but also redefined the portrayal of female protagonists in thriller and crime genres. What's striking about Jodie's transition is the deliberate nature of her choices. Rather than allowing Hollywood to dictate her path, she selected roles that challenged stereotypes and pushed boundaries, roles that showcased women as complex, multifaceted individuals. Her approach was not just about survival in an unforgiving industry. It was about crafting a legacy that balanced artistic integrity with cultural impact. These films were not mere stepping stones but statements. They declared that Jodie Foster was a mature artist capable of commanding the screen with intelligence, emotional depth, and an unyielding presence. Her performances resonated with audiences and critics alike, marking a triumphant evolution from child star to a serious actor whose work continues to inspire. By carving her own path through these transformative roles, Jodie Foster redefined what it meant to grow up in Hollywood, not as a casualty of fame, but as a creator of enduring art. While many actors remained confined to the roles handed to them, Jodie Foster chose a different path, one that would allow her to fully express her creative vision and assert control over the stories she wanted to tell. Her evolution from celebrated actress to respected director and storyteller is a testament to her multifaceted talent and unyielding commitment to artistry. Beginning in the late 1990s and gaining momentum in the 2000s, Jodie made a deliberate pivot behind the camera. This transition was not a retreat from the spotlight, but a powerful expansion of her creative influence. Her directorial debut with Little Man Tate, 1991, was a clear statement of intent, a deeply empathetic exploration of a child prodigy's emotional and social challenges, reflecting Jodie's own lifelong fascination with the complexities of youth and intellect. This film was met with critical praise, establishing her not only as an actor but also as a thoughtful filmmaker with a unique perspective. Jodie's voice as a director is marked by subtlety, emotional depth, and a keen understanding of character psychology. She favors stories that explore human vulnerability and resilience, often focusing on characters navigating difficult circumstances with courage and grace. Her subsequent directorial works, including Home for the Holidays, 1995, The Beaver, 2011, and Money Monster, 2016, have further solidified her reputation as a storyteller unafraid to tackle complex themes through intimate, character-driven narratives. Behind the camera, Jodie fosters collaboration and respect, drawing nuanced performances from her actors and crafting atmospheres that immerse audiences in authentic, compelling worlds. Her evolution into a director complements her acting career, revealing layers of artistry that few in Hollywood manage to achieve. This duality, masterful in front of and behind the camera, cements Jodie Foster's legacy as a visionary artist who has shaped her own narrative with deliberate care. Her work behind the scenes allows her to champion stories that might otherwise go untold, contributing to the industry's evolving landscape and expanding the possibilities for women filmmakers. Jodie's journey into directing exemplifies a rare blend of creative courage and intellectual rigor. It highlights her relentless pursuit not only of personal growth but also of meaningful, impactful storytelling that resonates far beyond the screen. Through her work as a director, she continues to inspire audiences and creators alike, proving that true artistry transcends medium and is defined by vision, integrity, and voice. In an era where celebrity culture often blurs the lines between public persona and private life, Jodie Foster stands as a striking example of how to navigate the relentless gaze of fame with dignity, grace, and an unwavering commitment to privacy. Despite being one of Hollywood's most acclaimed and enduring figures, Jodie has masterfully maintained an aura of mystery, rarely allowing the media or public curiosity to penetrate the carefully guarded walls of her personal life. This deliberate preservation of privacy is not born out of secrecy or fear but out of a profound respect for herself and the boundaries she deems essential for her well-being. While countless stars have been consumed by the invasive nature of fame, Jodie chose to define her narrative on her own terms, setting clear lines between what belongs to the public and what remains hers alone. Her rare interviews and public appearances are marked by thoughtful reflection rather than oversharing, inviting admiration not just for her work, but for the authenticity and self-possession she projects. Jodie's discretion has often fueled intrigue, making her all the more compelling as a figure who refuses to be reduced to tabloid fodder or the endless churn of celebrity gossip. She embodies the idea that true power lies not in constant visibility but in controlled presence. A mastery of when to engage and when to step back. This balance has allowed her to cultivate a lasting respect across generations of audiences and industry peers alike. In many ways, Jodie Foster represents the ideal of a private icon, someone who shines brilliantly in the public sphere yet remains deeply connected to her inner life, values, and intellectual pursuits. Her ability to keep personal matters out of the spotlight has enabled her to focus on what matters most: her art, her family, and her advocacy. This dignified approach has not gone unnoticed. Colleagues, critics, and fans often cite her as a role model for how to sustain a long, impactful career without sacrificing one's integrity or privacy. In a world that often demands exposure, Jodie's example serves as a powerful reminder that mystery can be a form of strength, and that maintaining one's boundaries is a crucial act of self-care and empowerment. Her life is a testament to the fact that one can be both profoundly influential and deeply private, a rare and admirable duality that continues to inspire those who admire not only her talent but also her character. Jodie Foster's journey from precocious child actress to a commanding presence in Hollywood is more than just a tale of career evolution. It is a profound narrative of resilience, intellect, and unwavering self-determination. Today, she stands as a beacon of timeless talent, a living testament to what it means to maintain control over one's life and art amid the relentless pressures that often consume young stars. In an industry notorious for devouring its brightest young talents, Jodie's ability to sustain a remarkable career over decades is nothing short of extraordinary. Her legacy is not defined merely by awards or box office success but by the integrity with which she has navigated fame's tumultuous tides. She has become a role model for artists who seek to balance public acclaim with personal authenticity, proving that it is possible to thrive on one's own terms. Jodie's story challenges the conventional narrative of Hollywood's child stars as fleeting or doomed to fall. Instead, she exemplifies the power of resilience, a testament to how intellect, discipline, and thoughtful choices can safeguard a career from the pitfalls that have claimed so many others. Her influence extends beyond her filmography. It resonates in the way she has redefined what it means to be a woman in Hollywood, embracing complexity, privacy, and control. This legacy in motion continues to inspire not only aspiring actors but also creatives and audiences around the world who admire her courage and grace. As the industry evolves, Jodie Foster remains a powerful example of longevity built on substance over spectacle. Her life and work remind us that true artistry transcends fleeting trends, and that the most enduring legacies are those crafted with wisdom and intention. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the dazzling rise, turbulent trials, and enduring legacies of Hollywood's brightest young stars. If this episode stirred something in you, I invite you to subscribe, leave a like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Tell me, where in the world are you listening from, and what time is it there right now? I read each one with care, and it means more than you know. Good night.